UKMotorTalk.
Hello everyone, we are back. This is episode 214, like everyone's granddad's favourite rover. How are you all doing?
I'm knackered. I'm sleepy. I'm really tired. But apart from that, I'm knackered.
What he said, basically, I feel much the same. I've been staring at screens all day and now I'm looking at more, but at least the view's slightly different, which makes a nice change. I understand you're not feeling too great at the minute, Mr. Gates. You're a little bit under the weather.
Yes, I am nursing a raging cold at the moment. I'm just riddled with it, so feel bad for me because, of course, no one suffers colds like us blokes do they really?
It's flu.
Nobody suffers colds like you in particular. We're heading into that time of year for you, which is a perma-cold, and just every week, I've got a cold. It's like, is it another cold or the same cold, or is it just the same strain going round and round and round? So yeah, this is you for about the next 6 months, isn't it? So buckle in.
It is, because I have 2 children in 2 different areas of disease. I've got one at nursery, which is a hotbed of disease, and they come back with typhoid or whatever every other week, don't they? Hands, foot and mouth the week before last, and then this ridiculous cold, and then school. So between the 2 of them, I have absolutely no chance. And then on the odd occasion, I have to see the general public as well. It's completely, there's no hope. No hope. I mean, all I need to really do is stand on a tube train, and then I'd have the full set.
Diphtheria, yes, tick that one off. Whooping cough, yes. You've get the gastroenteritis from the tube, plus many others. That's the worst thing. They reckon that if you hang on to it used to be the hangy downy things. You don't have them on the tube anymore. It's they're just rails, aren't they? But they used to reckon that if you held onto one of them for longer than about 10 seconds, you've got more germs on you than if you'd licked the entirety of your toilet bowl clean. It's not a clean place, the underground. It's cleaner than it used to be, but it's germ central.
I can see it now. Clive, where have you been?
Yeah, I think carrying around a small bottle of hand sanitizer, which was a habit most people picked up a few years ago, is probably quite a good thing to carry on, isn't it?
The funny thing is, still, the first thing I do when I get upstairs, our offices are upstairs, is go straight into the loo, wash my hands, before I go and carry on doing anything else. And that's definitely something that's carried on from COVID. It'll also explain why, presumably, by the end of the winter, I have no skin left on my hands.
But it's obviously not working, because you're riddled with cold all the time. Whereas I don't wash my hands when I get to work and I haven't got a cold. So maybe expose yourself to more germs to toughen up your immune system.
Well, and to be honest, I think it's because people sneeze at me at point blank range. However, have you gents ever got into a car where there's enough skin and bits and pieces stuck to a steering wheel and the stop of the steering wheel cowling to make another person out of?
Oh yes, many a time.
How do people make it through life without ever cleaning that off? It is just not. And if you're listening to us whilst eating breakfast or lunch or indeed any kind of food stuff, I am wholeheartedly sorry. Please accept our apologies. And if you do want to complain, write to us at UKMotorTalk or tweet us and tell us, please stop talking about disgusting stuff when I'm eating.
Well, you only have to look at that episode, or I think they did a couple, didn't they? A couple of episodes of Top Gear where they forensically dissected the detritus that they'd found in cars they'd bought, and there was some very unpleasant stuff they were pulling out of the carpet, and God only knows what else. Bodily fluids, and the sort of bodily fluids you really don't want to be. Well, you don't really want to be touching anyone else's bodily fluids unless it's that special time and it's somebody you are very keen on. But yes, picking up bits of snot and other stuff from the shag pile carpet of your 30-year-old BMW 320. Not fun, and I can imagine that in the trade you're coming into contact with that sort of thing on a more than regular basis.
Yeah, I think it's when you get in a car and you look at the steering wheel and you think, oh, the leather or the pleather or the pattern or whatever it is so worn away that it's exposed what's underneath the leather. But when you actually look a little bit closer, it's not. It's the layer of dirt that's on top of it that makes it look like it's worn away. And actually, sort of 20 minutes with a steam cleaner and a brush, and the steering wheel's back to looking brand new again. That's quite satisfying, though, when you get a car like that and you can clean it up like that.
Oh, you can imagine digging your nail into it.
That much skin comes off your hands without just giving the steering wheel a wipe every now and again. I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, should we move on to slightly more pleasant things?
And if I don't make it through the rest of this podcast, I'm Mike, and I've been mostly covered in other people's bodily fluids. Goodbye.
Hashtag
goodbye.
Pray for Gates.
Right, I suppose we should probably talk about F1.
Yeah, that Dutch bloke can drive, can't he? Jesus, he's a bit good, him. It's sort of I don't know, it's almost I think Brazil was, he was just teasing everybody a little bit, wasn't he? And then it was just when you think there's maybe a championship challenge on, it's like, oh, by the way, watch this. And then, yeah, there was just too much of a swing the other way, wasn't it? I mean, it was maybe more in hope than expectation that there'd be a championship challenge and Norris could carry on chipping away 11 points, 10 points here, 12 points here and stay in it. But yeah, to be fair, after the sprint, it was looking fairly reasonable, I think, that he was on for a good result. But yeah, the weather was a bit damp, as tends to be in Brazil. If I heard the phrase Interlagos, in between the lakes, yes, we know it means in between the lakes. You know, I think I must have heard that phrase about 3,000 times on the commentary. But it was a good race. It was a long day of motor racing, though. I think that, well, even longer for everybody who was there, of course. I mean, a big shout out to all the mechanics, all the teams, all the pit crew that are at the end of this triple header. You know, 3 races in 3 weeks, and especially people like the Williams mechanics, who seem to have to rebuild about 38 Formula 1 cars over the course of the weekend. Everybody must be absolutely knackered with this, but qualifying got I think everybody had to be at the track at sort of 6:30 in the morning on Sunday, and then by the time they were sort of wrapping up and packing up, it was getting very, very dark. So it was a long old day of racing, but quite a good day of racing, I thought. But yeah, possibly it for Norris's championship challenge, such as it ever was. But yeah, a good old drive by Max. Slightly lucky with the safety car to make up as many places as he did with the red flag. But after that, he was just on another planet, wasn't he?
Did he not make up something like 2 seconds a lap difference by the end? He was compared to
he got lucky and hadn't pitted and changed tyres when the red flag came out. Them's the brakes. It goes against you sometimes, it goes for you sometimes. I think they need to change that rule, because Norris and Russell and a few others who had just pitted, and of course lost 20, well, Norris was right at the end of the VSC when he pitted, so I think he lost about 20 odd seconds. They then chuck a red flag and everybody lines up in the pit lane and you can change tyres for free. So it's they need to tweak the rule. Is it luck? Is it judgment? Is it, well, actually, to be fair, it was raining that hard, and they said in the build-up to the race, we're going to get a lot of rain about halfway through the race, and they got about halfway through the race, and it rained a lot. It's fairly obvious that it's going to be red flag, so do you say, I mean, the benefit of hindsight is very easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, just stay out because they'll red flag it, but if your tyres have done half the race and are knackered and you end up binning it, as many people managed to do over the course of the weekend, I think qualifying, I've never seen so many red flags in a qualifying. I think qualifying took longer than the actual race in the end. With everybody bidding it, but it was do you take that gamble, or I think they need to change the rules to something, but what that makes it fair for everyone. I mean, it's maybe just because we're British, or the last couple of red flag change your tyres advantageous things that spring to mind of done over Norris this weekend. I remember Button getting done over by Vettel one weekend in Monaco, so it's do they say if you change your tyres, you have to drop to the back, but then if you have to drop to the back because the field's bunched up, it's more of a penalty? I don't know. Or do they just, I don't know. I don't know what you do with it, or just say that stop doesn't count. So everybody changes tyres in the red flag period, but if you haven't already made a stop, then you have to make a stop afterwards. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that.
No tyre changes during a red flag?
Yeah, in wet conditions, the rule about having to use 2 different compounds goes out the window. So in the wet, if you want to do the entire race on one set of intermediates, then you can. So again, you might say, well, I was planning on not stopping at all. So who knows? But anyway, that helped him make up a chunk of places, but I think he'd have made them anyway. But yeah, I think he set something like 17 fastest laps on the way to being 20 seconds out front towards the end. I mean, that was just a a masterclass. That was just just as you think you're getting close. That's if you're Lando Norris thinking, oh, I've maybe got a chance of this, that's Max firmly putting you back in your box, I think. But the McLaren didn't seem to work too well in wet conditions. Dry, if the race had stayed dry, I think it would have been a very different weekend and a very different story and a very different points tally. Did everybody see the footage of Lewis driving around in Senna's McLaren? That looked pretty special, that did. And almost half threatened to be ruined by the rain, but in a way I think it made it look a hell of a lot cooler because, Senna was always legendary in the wet, so to see that car being run out and he was getting on with it, he wasn't hanging around at all. I think with the race he'd had, he'd have rather just stayed in that car for the rest of the weekend.
It's always very emotional to see anything that Senna's been connected to over the years, but particularly when it's red and white and going round and round, those rooster tails of spray coming off the back. It's very evocative, isn't it? Talking of tyres and wet things, there's a little bit of controversy, isn't there? I mean, Red Bull have been accusing others, including McLaren especially, of adding water to their tyres in order to improve cooling. Where are we at with that? That sounds a little bit... how should we say, nefarious, if that is going on.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
It's...
Our lawyers ask us to point out.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about any of this, but it's how much I don't know, if you ever tried filling a tyre with water and putting it in a car and driving and see what happens. It's a stupid idea, isn't it? It's the sort of thing you do as a prank on your mate's car, or, when you're driving the car to the scrapyard, you think, oh, let's half fill the tyres with water just to see what happens. It's not a normal thing to do, is it? But I think they're talking about a reasonably small amount of water it transfers the heat better or worse, or keeps it cooler or warmer. I don't know. I flunked out of physics quite miserably, but I can't imagine it retaining the heat better or worse or helping cool it, or because it's the heat's contained within the rubber and within the tyre, isn't it? I can't imagine a few drops of water making a difference. I don't know. Well,
I'd imagine the water's sloshing around in there and isn't really touching the surfaces in order to transfer the heat away from them. So at any point, it's always in sort of literally in suspension. The thing's moving around in there. I don't know. I mean, it's all news to me. It was just something that caught my eye because, as you know, I mean, I'm not a full-time, full-on Formula One fan these days, but things like that do pop up and intrigue me. And any naughtiness going on in Formula One is always somewhat intriguing to keep an eye on. And I just thought it was ironic, given the how much the weather and rain, water, wetness had played on proceedings this weekend, for that team to be throwing its toys out of the pram potentially about others and water and tyres. It seemed a bit opposite.
Yeah, I think whether it's just a bit of gamesmanship or, all the other teams had mentioned something about Red Bull's front bib adjuster that was their method of adjusting the ride height, but you couldn't do it once the car was together. But then they spent the weekend showing the FIA delegates how, we need to get a really big long extension in here to do it. And it's like, well, I'm sure you don't actually need the extension to be that long. I think you're just taking the mick a little bit there. But that was that was an odd one. So it's like, well, just because you can adjust it doesn't mean that you have done. So it's that's how we adjust it, just in the same way that how do you adjust the rear ride height, or how do you adjust the front roll bar stiffness? Well, you change this bit, or you change this torsion beam, or you change this damper. Just because you can doesn't mean you do. All the cars go into Parc Fermé. Lots of them will be taken apart and put back together again, but they get put back together again as they were put back before, because all the teams know if they get caught cheating, they get kicked out. So I think most of them tend not to these days, but maybe it's just coming up with a really clever ways of cheating, like Ferrari did allegedly. It was, well, when do you measure it? Well, every thousandths of a second, or every other thousandths of a second. Okay, so every other thousandths of a second we can do what we like. No. Okay, I'll go away. And it's I'm just not sure about water in tyres, to be honest. But hey ho, I could be wrong. They could have been doing it, and I don't know, does anything in the rules say you can't? I think they have to be filled with nitrogen.
Apparently it's absolutely verboten. I did look into this, and it's very much against the rules as stated in the FIA's rule book as it stands.
In which case, I do highly doubt that any of the teams will be doing it because it's just so obvious.
Well, there was a question mark, wasn't there, over whether Red Bull were using tyre cooling, but using air diverted around the tyres to help cool them down, rear tyres, or to get more longevity out of them during a race.
Oh yeah, that's certainly a thing that you would point the air where you wanted it to, or if you were having a problem, with the tyres overheating, you point some air at them. If you're having a problem not being able to warm the tyres up, then you point a bit less air at them. That's well within the rules. That's okay. That's absolutely fine. So again, I think the things that are expressly banned, the teams tend not deliberately, at least anyway, try and get away with them. Things like weights. The minimum weight is X. The teams always know that and aim for it and know that it's not worth cheating because it's one of the easiest things to check on the weighbridge. And, as Mercedes found out, it's a very easy, it's a very absolute. You don't do it. The limit is this. If you are under it, you are under it. Even by a gram, that's it. You're out. And so if the rules are filled with nitrogen only, then I'd imagine they are filled with nitrogen only. I think Pirelli initially do the pressurising of the tyres. Obviously, when they fit the tyres at the start of every weekend, they'll do the initial pumping them up. Where the air comes from to increase or decrease the pressures after that, I'm not too sure. But whether that's a standardised, here's your canister of nitrogen for the weekend, get on with it. Anything other surreptitious or being added to it would definitely be against the rules. So.
Well, I mean, Pirelli have got to be careful as well, haven't they? Being the supplier, if they're found to be colluding, even if it's unwittingly, then there's some argument that we'll strip you of your supplier status and we'll have Goodyear back or Bridgestone or whoever else. They don't want to be tainted by this. I imagine they're doing all they can to be cleaner than clean and sort of overseeing everything in the pits when the tyres are being shuffled around and having bits and pieces added, taken away, attached to cars, air taken in and out, or nitrogen or whatever it is they're using. I imagine it's in Pirelli's best interest not to let anything happen anyway. And apparently they've said thus far that they can't see any evidence of tampering, and whilst they're not across the tyres the whole time, they don't see any evidence of tampering. And you've got to sort of accept that is their business. They will know if anything untoward's been going on.
I don't know, Pirelli will probably be quite happy enough just to bugger off at this stage. I think they seem to get enough grief about their tyres as it is, despite fulfilling exactly the brief that was given to them to, make some tyres that degrade. What, like how quickly? Like really, really, really quickly, and then they just fall off a cliff, so we have lots of pit stops. Okay, we will. Hang on, these tyres just fall apart. And it's like, yes, that's what you wanted. Oh no, make them last better. Okay, oh no, that's too good. What do we do? And yeah, the brief is always a little bit messy. And then, the full wet tyres again over the weekend, the argument over those came up, and Pirelli say, well, we can't make them any better because nobody will ever do a wet weather test. We invite you all to a wet weather test to come and do some running in the rain and tell us what you think and help us improve, but nobody ever turns up. So how do we test the tyres? And but again, I think when it's wet enough to need the full wets, the visibility is so appalling because of A, the spray from the tyres, but B, the spray from the aerodynamics. Like you say, it was very telling to see the spray from Senna's car was from the tyres. I know there was no onboard from a car behind it or anything, but it was quite a clear, clean, crisp sort of spray pattern, whereas the aerodynamics of a modern F1 car, it shows the amount of downforce they're producing just purely by the amount of water it lifts off the track. I think even if an F1 car didn't have any tyres in contact with the road to lift the water off, it would lift a ridiculous amount of water off the track and into the air. Again, it sort of shows the trickiness, but a little bit of health and safety and whatever else thrown into it. But some of the onboards that you saw from the weekend, particularly the race, you think, how on earth can you see even the rain light in front of you that's 4 car lengths in front of you has disappeared at 200 miles an hour? So, I think everybody apart from Lance Stroll certainly earned their money this weekend.
Yes, turn right at 90 degrees into a barrier.
Yeah, and then it wasn't so much that. It was, that's easy done, but then he just sort of drove straight into the gravel trap. It was almost like, no, I'm not up for this today. Oh no, I've parked it. Oh no, what a shame. And just wanted to get out. I think that was probably the best thing. But I did like Piastri's comments over the weekend. He just said, "Yeah, well, we had Lance Stroll roaming around like it was his first go-kart race as well." So he's throwing a bit of shade at him. So actually, I do quite like Oscar for his comments like that.
I'm hoping now, if I may, just to bring us a little bit closer to to Earth, I suppose, and for me, a bit closer to home, because I need your advice, and I'm going to throw this open to the floor. So if you're listening now and you've got some ideas, then please let me know what you think.
BMW 3 Series touring, or if that's not big enough for 5 Series touring. Next.
Well, there we go. There's the answer. Thank you for listening. Good night. Mum and Dad, they have got a Ford Puma ST currently, which has been fine. They've relatively enjoyed that. They had 2 cars before, a Focus ST. My mum had a Puma. And they went down to 1 car. They look after my 2 kids, who are 5 and 2. And now they're looking for a new car to replace the Puma ST. Now, Ford have gone, well, they're trying to bring their emissions down, I think. So they've removed all the STs from the range pretty much, with the exception of a 1 litre turbo auto ST 170 horsepower Puma ST, which to me seems a bit semi-skimmed.
That's very watered down. I mean, to be fair, the Focus ST 170 was 170, but that car weighed, half what the current Puma does, with all the safety gubbins and bits and pieces in them. Maybe not quite half, but not far off.
And although it's a reasonable engine, it was not much more than a warm hatch, was it, the ST 170? It was never really a hot hatch.
Yeah, it was certainly nice, because I think at the time when I was smoking around in them, they were, I was late teens, early 20s, so it was a bit of a treat. They were certainly quicker than most of the humdrum stuff that was going through at the time. So, yeah, a good bit of fun. But what was the curb weight of a Mark 1 Focus? 11, 12, 1300 at the most, something like that, kilos, I would think.
Not a lot.
Probably about that.
Yeah, not a huge amount, whereas the Puma's certainly a slight bit portlier than that, isn't it? And, yeah, why... But once you've hit 200 and something, how can you go backwards? It just doesn't make sense. I get emissions are a thing, but we'll just produce them in limited numbers, or I don't know, do better with electric or whatever else. I know, again, that's very easy to say with hindsight, or just don't bother. If you're going to half-arse something, just don't arse it at all. What's the point?
Yes, don't stick out. It seems like a cynical marketing exercise.
Yeah, I think a Puma ST is definitely out of the window. Manual or auto?
Well, here's the thing, because Mum's had an op on her ankle, so actually an auto I think would be better, because she hasn't been driving for some time. The basic criteria is that it needs to have enough space for the kids in the back. They would actually like a bit more boot space and actually a bit more space in the back, so something Focus sort of size is good. They've had Fords for years, and Dad likes some power for overtaking, but not necessarily something that's outrageously leery.
Are they thinking standard car or one of the diminishing number of standard looking vehicles, or are they going for SUV alike, sort of sitting up higher? Because I mean, my dad's recently, not brand new, but he's got a 3-year-old likely used Nissan Kumquat of the sort of previous generation. That's got the 1.3 but turbocharged within an inch of its life, dual clutch and all that sort of thing, and that's got about 150 horsepower. Seems pretty nippy, plenty of room in it. I mean, it's run of the mill every day. It's nothing special, but it's plenty quick for an 8-year-old. and he's got plenty of room in the back. Actually, I was surprised at how much room there was. I mean,
that'd be a hard pass.
But it's yet another.
They are just awful, though, aren't they? They are just awful.
Well, what it is.
It is what it is, but it's nothing special, absolutely. It's not something I'd buy, but I was pleasantly surprised by how much better it was than the first generation one, put it that way. But that's not really saying a lot, is it?
If your lunchtime special, your meal deal, is a plain cheese sandwich and ready salted crisps and a bottle of water, that is the car for you. It is absolutely fine. It will fill you up and it will do what it needs to do, but it is absolutely beige. It needs to have a bit more go than that, I think. So... I mean, I was asked to bring home a Focus ST to try, Focus ST Estate, which of such a thing, it seems, doesn't really exist anymore, because although technically you can buy one, Ford won't build you one. So they're out of the equation. So it gives you an idea as the sort of thing probably that they'd be after. So think 200 brake horsepower plus, something that has an engine because they're not keen on EV, and something with a reasonable amount of carrying capacity, but also not necessarily too leery, something that can be comfortable and under the radar.
Skoda Octavia VRS Estate.
Yeah,
Perfect.
There we go.
There we go.
Or
I was just about to say, does it have to be brand new?
I think so. Yeah, I think they are going to go new. They're going to go new.
They are depreciation enthusiasts, aren't they?
They are, yes. But there's something quite nice about having it to being the first person to have a car. Apart from the people that have loaded up at the docks that have ragged it around for a bit, you're the first person to jump into that car and actually drive in the road. I did, sticking with the Skoda theme, and inspired by a certain sleeper, I actually had a bit of a look around to see what was available as the Superb with a 2-litre DSG all-wheel drive, and you can get a current shape one with, I think, near enough 280 brake horsepower. Thank you. 280 brake horsepower and an 0 to 60 time of less than 6 seconds, which I think is exceptional for the size of the car. It's like 5.5 seconds. With a bit of money off, they're available for about 42, 43, which is a chunk of change, but still cheaper than something like a Cougar and still in line with something like a Qashqai with an average engine. So for me, that seems like quite a good buy.
They are great. I mean, I'm looking around, as I have been for a while now, looking at sort of maybe shifting the 2-generation-old version that I've got, Superb. It's the saloon hatch hybrid, not a hybrid, but it's that weird double boot thing. It won't be with the new one because I can't afford 40 grand. But I've been looking at the sort of, again, probably about a generation old now, sort of 16, 17 reg, perhaps slightly newer depending on what I can afford. 280 Superb to sort of go basically like for like on what I've got. I mean, yes, it's got 2 less cylinders, but it's the traditional, yes, you can have our engine from Volkswagen, but you have to detune it because we can't have it going as fast as the expensive ones that everyone's paying full whack for. But that would do me, the 280 Estate ideally, but the saloons look far less heinous than mine does. The proportions seem to have finally been worked out on those. They're great. They're great cars. I mean, again, even those are doing less than 6 seconds to 60. Mine does it in about 6. That's quick, but I mean, getting under 6 is a psychological barrier, but it'd be quite fun. They're good cars. I mean, I was just looking, about 4 or 5 different people have sent me this for fairly obvious reasons. There's Johnny Smith has found the ultimate sleeper. It's a Skoda Superb, what started as a 280. It's now sort of kicking out 500, but it still looks like the sort of thing mothers take their kids to football in, which is the absolute perfect epitome of a sleeper. That's exactly the sort of thing you want. I think I could be tempted to sort of, as I say, go for the 4-cylinder one, get rid of the 6-cylinder. I mean, yeah, the noise won't be so good, but then you've got all that turbocharging headroom then, haven't you, rather than the mechanical stuff you have to do on a naturally aspirated, as I found out. I'll have to spend a fortune just to get another 20 horsepower, whereas turbo, it's like, how much would you like me to turn the wick up, sir? And yes, 500 brake horsepower, that thing is absolutely wonderful. Superb, you might say.
That's all the power you ever need, isn't it? That's adequate for a daily driver, isn't it?
Yeah, and 4-wheel drive as well, containing it, and that'll keep it on the straight and narrow and help it go around corners when it's kicking out all that power, the sort of thing that's basically urinating on Audi S models. That'd be quite fun, actually. I'd quite like that.
Well, I think it's the same engine I had in my S3, the EA 888 engine. And that thing, it absolutely flew with supposedly standard 310 horsepower. So, yeah, I could see that really would go. And I just love the idea that it's a proper sleeper. I mean, I used to get 40 to the gallon. Which I think is incredible, really. I mean, and you laughing because I bet what do you get out of your V6? Let's have a listen. Go on.
Well, put it this way: on a long run, to use the often trotted out phrase, last year. We drove up to Scotland, motorways basically most of the way. I thought I was doing well at 34 miles to the gallon. So, yeah.
But I bet
terrible.
you were comfy doing it, and I bet you arrived very, very relaxed, didn't you?
Absolutely. So, it's exactly what we said. It's what the car was designed to do.
What price comfort?
Well, about
34 to the gallon, apparently.
Yes.
It was superb. I mean, petrol was quite a bit more expensive back then as well. So you did feel it, but Yeah, I mean 34 a few years ago, that was, you're not doing badly with 34 miles to go. And then everyone got diesels, and then everyone went turbo petrol, and it's, you're getting less than 40. Good God, you must be crippled financially. I mean, it's not a cheap car to run, and I wouldn't use it as a commuter car because you're into late 20s, if you're lucky, then sitting in traffic. And it doesn't have a stop-start thing either, because I think that you'd need a battery the size of the sort of thing that would power your house in an outage in order to get that thing started and stopped every so often. But it does make a fantastic noise. I think that's been lost a bit with the turbo engines.
Definitely.
Now. The VR6 does make an awesome noise, and that's part of the reason I wanted it, but also part of the reason was the sleeper factor. But there's sleepers and then there's sleepers, so I think it may be time to up the game. But there you go, Gates. There's your parents' new car. Get them a 40 grand 280 and say there's room for building on that.
Yes, I think also on the note of sound, the gasoline particulate filter or petrol particulate filter, that kills a lot of it as well. Makes them sound pants. When I had my S3 had a Miltec on, which was loud, wasn't it, when it was in sport mode? Jim, you probably remember
a little bit farty, a little bit
very
farty.
Yeah, definitely farty. I do remember we were driving home in a spirited fashion, within the limits, of course, along the A27.
Officer.
And you were in your 330E, and I was in the process of overtaking in my farty Audi, and as I came over the top of the brow of the hill, there was a traffic officer in the left-hand lane, and I've never switched a car into comfort mode so quickly. I was just doing, just the exhaust air completely died. There's a bright yellow Audi comes sailing past, and it's just me looking sideways at the police officer and grinning, "Hi, officer." Over the top of the hill, and then moving back in again. Yeah, keep it in quiet mode. I've never killed the noise of a car so much. You must have just heard me coming, and they just suddenly, I've just
pressed the Jekyll and Hyde button.
Yeah, well, in sort of in comfort mode, it was out of sport. It was relatively quiet if you were off the throttle. But yeah, good grief, or eco mode or whatever it was. Yeah, absolutely crazy. Oh, that was a great all rounder, I think. So probably on that basis, I would say something like a Golf R, but they're like 50 grand now, which is outrageous. I really like the idea of an i30N, but they've stopped making it.
They still do a Golf R estate.
They do, but again, 50 grand. Would you pay 50 grand for a Golf? I'm not sure.
Get one of those, because those will be ridiculously rare, won't they? Because who buys a Golf R estate? So in 20 years' time, that will be the barn find. Yeah, us three, but we're weird. So that will be the barn find. That will be the one you want, won't it?
Yeah. There is something very satisfying about a fast estate car. And I've, as I often do, window shop around on the internet, and I found a V60 T8. I don't know if you've come across these before.
Yeah.
It's basically a Polestar. They do a Polestar version of it, which, apart from having slightly larger wheels and the gold calipers and gold seatbelts, looks just like a V60, but has something like 415 brake horsepower, which is perfect. It's exactly what you need in an estate car. And for me, I would much rather have a fast car that looks slow than a slow car that looks fast, a 1 litre or whatever, dressed up with all the spoilers and bits and pieces on there. I don't get it.
No. Oh, definitely, yeah. It needs the go to back up the show, doesn't it? Which I think brings us round full circle to the issue we have with the Puma ST. The fact that it might have all the show and all the looks and the funny matte wheels and the red calipers and the splitters and the spoilers and the whatever else. But yeah, with 1 litre 3-cylinder on the bonnet, it just doesn't quite cut it, does it? So there we go. But a sad sign of the time. So anyway, something Teutonic and something estate-like.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's so many whatever the equivalent is, the 116 these days, 1.5 3-cylinder, 150 horsepower or something. Again, it's okay. It's literally okay. But when you see that you could buy that with winglets on the front, you've got canards on the front bumper, and you think, do you really need that?
Probably not to contain the 150 horses, do you?
No, indeed. And the AMG lines and ST lines, all the rest of it. No, I think I'd rather go the other way. I've always liked the idea, for example, of getting a RS Focus like the shape I had Mark III in something like black or grey, and then just fitting Z-Tech bumpers and a Z-Tech spoiler to it. Tune it up a bit so you're 400 or 500 horsepower. And again, it would be so much fun, wouldn't it? A couple of downturned exhausts behind the back of the bumper, just to wind people up, and why not indeed? But nevertheless, this is not for me, this is for Mum and Dad. So if you're listening now and you've got a serious suggestion of a car that works for 2 people, but with the capacity of carrying the grandkids around and stuff in the back, it needs to be comfortable enough for my retired parents, but also have enough power for overtaking, which probably means over 200 horsepower. Let us know what you think. We are at UK Motor Talk pretty much everywhere. And so, on that note, I guess it's probably time that we say goodbye. Thanks once again for listening to us, and we hope you have a lovely evening, day, morning, whatever time it is. Enjoy it.
Goodbye. Take care. Oh, and public service announcement for this time of year. Go and check your headlights, because there's lots of people whose headlights don't work, so just go and have a look and make sure yours are working, because it's dark out there.
Yeah, actually switch them on.
Well, yes, that helps as well, yeah. Try turning them on, but yes, check that all the bulbs are working at the front. So, top tip, if you haven't got anybody to give you a hand, then, pull up to the garage door or glass window fronted shop or something like that late at night and just have a look and make sure your lights are working. So, yeah, check your bulbs.
Take care. We'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
UK Motor Talk, a First Take Media production.